and welcome to the WiSP News Desk. We're back once again. Myself, Chris Stafford, alongside Nancy Gillen, who is back in the Northern Hemisphere. Last time we talked to you, we're in the Southern Hemisphere, recovering, or just hardly, within 24 hours, wasn't it? We did that show, Nancy, looking back at the World Cup down there in Sydney. And, you covered the Sydney games, of course, the Australian games, and then you went on a bit of a vacation, but you're now back in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, I'm back in England now. It all kind of seems like a distant dream, to be honest. But I'm happy to be back. I think a lot of exciting women's sports events going on. The Women's Super League starting this weekend, so I don't have too much Women's World Cup blues because, there's so much going on now.
There certainly is. Yeah, we've picked up and hit the ground running when it comes to football, which we're going to cover, of course, on this episode, along with rugby and tennis. We've got a little golf news, but we're going to start, Nancy, with the name of Tigist Assefa, who just won the Berlin Marathon. And she ran there last year, but she really stood out this time, didn't she? Because she broke her record. And what I find interesting with this woman, it's about 11 years ago that she was running middle distance, like 400, 800. She hadn't even turned to the streets at that point. And now she's in the record books and the first Ethiopian woman breaking records too, which pretty astounding.
Yeah, I think she only started racing marathons, I think, April last year. So that's about a year and a half that she's been running marathon length, which is, I think, astonishing for her. The world record was 2 hours, 11 minutes and 53 seconds, which I think if most people ran a half marathon in that time, they'd be happy with it. So the fact she's ran double that in that time is incredible. And just obviously a very raw talent. But the fact that she started so recently suggests that world record is kind of hers for the taking again. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if she continued to break that. Yeah.
Like I said, she was the first Ethiopian woman to break a marathon world record. So I think we're going to hear a lot more of her. But, the African women are just so talented when it comes to marathon running, distance running. They're a great inspiration for you, Nancy. You're going to go back to the London Marathon next year. So there is times there for you to aspire to.
Yeah, although I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it anywhere near 2 hours. But
well, put it in context. What was your time when you ran it a couple of years ago?
I did it in 4.5 hours, which I was pretty happy with. That's what I was aiming for. I think even touching 3 hours would be difficult. I'd love to get something like sub 4, but that would definitely require a lot of training. So, I mean, when you kind of think that's probably average time, it makes these kind of times even more astonishing.
Yeah, talking about hitting the ground running since you got back from the World Cup, you are literally hitting the ground running because you've got to start now preparing for that London Marathon in the spring. Yeah,
pretty much. I need to kind of get my 5Ks faster at the moment, which is what I'm aiming to do. And then also going to go to the gym quite a lot to strengthen up kind of the muscles in my legs again. Because, I think kind of having been away for a bit and then just even after the London Marathon, you kind of let things slip a bit. So I'm going to do a couple of months of getting faster and stronger and then start doing the distance stuff at the start of December, which should give me like 5 months to get the distance up. So it's kind of, got to really make sure I'm disciplined with it now.
There you go. Well, I know how beneficial the cross training is because, as you know, I did that long bike ride, the 650-mile Empire State Trail in May of this year. And it was the winter cross training that really helped me because I didn't have the opportunity to bike so much outdoors before we did that ride. So I swear by cross training now. It's made a big difference, including, I don't know if you know this, I've included cardio boxing now in my routine.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, it really is, makes a big difference, for your strength. It's good for a lot of reasons. Anyone listening to this who's into fitness and training and sport will know the benefits of cardio boxing. But you know what I found on TikTok last night, Nancy? Music boxing. So you put this machine on the wall and it has various buttons that you actually box these buttons to a music beat. So, yeah, this might be something, when I don't have a sparring partner that I could get into.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds very fun.
Makes it a lot of fun. It certainly does. All right, let's jump over to golf. We don't often talk about golf, Nancy, even there's that regular battle between the US and Europe in the Solheim Cup that just happened. Doesn't get as much attention as you would think. It became a little bit like in tennis we had not the Fed Cup but the Whiteman Cup, wasn't it? That was very one-sided between the US and Europe. But you do have an update on what happened this time around.
Yeah, so it ended up being a 14-14 draw between the US and Europe. Europe won the previous two editions, and I believe that's why Europe essentially retained the Solheim Cup, because of that 14-14 draw. Obviously, in other sports, it kind of be like, you share the glory, but I think Europe retained it there. So that's the third consecutive Solheim Cup trophy for Europe. So dominating quite significantly there. Yeah,
definitely. And okay, well, I want to catch up with the tennis. Now we've got this opportunity finally to get together again and not just be talking about the Football World Cup, because so much has been happening, around that this summer and also in the fall season, the late summer, beginning of the fall season too. Because whilst you were away, the US Open happened when Coco Gauff won her first major singles title, and when she beat Anya Sabalenka, and that was whilst you were away, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Did you get to see any of it, or were you completely offline?
I was mainly offline. I did see bits and bobs. So, I love Coco Gauff. She's definitely one of my favourite players. So I was aware that she was doing well and eventually in the final, but the time difference, if the time difference was kind, I would have actually probably watched it, but it was the middle of the night, so I couldn't. But I saw I did see a bit of the fallout as well, kind of all the stuff that happened after and her celebrations, and it was really nice to see. And I think even though she's so young, it almost felt kind of long overdue for her, just because she's been around since she was 15 and knocking on the door of a Grand Slam title for so long. It felt a bit overdue despite her young age, which is a bit paradoxical, but yeah, really, really happy for her. And it was, I imagine, a great tournament for her.
Well, definitely. And what a way to end the season. But noticeably this year, over the 4 Grand Slams, there's been a different winner every time. We mentioned that she beat Sabalenka, of course, who won the Australian Open earlier this year, when she beat last year's Wimbledon champion, didn't she, Rybakina? And then Iga Swiatek won the French, and Marketa Vondrousova won Wimbledon. And that was such an upset. And I really felt for Ons Jabeur at Wimbledon, because she was absolutely brokenhearted. She thought she'd got that title, didn't she? So I think it was a really good year for the women's game with 4 different champions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think last year it was kind of Iga Swiatek was winning a lot, and there was kind of like who can beat her, but it seems way more open this year with 4 different winners and all quite different players as well, and some new Grand Slam winners as well. So there's quite a lot of variation there. So I think it just makes it super exciting, because it shows that there's potential for so many players. And I think when you look at the finals as well, it's not necessarily always the same players getting in the finals too, which is really good. So yeah, I'm excited. I always feel like the tennis season ends a bit early, because it's kind of obviously not fully over. You've still got the WTA finals and some other smaller tournaments, but yeah, it kind of comes to an end in terms of the Grand Slams in September, and then you've got to wait till January. So I'm looking forward to the Grand Slams starting again and seeing if we still get this variation of winners, or whether someone can come through and be really dominant.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we've got these champions now and some of them new champions. There's a lot of other blood coming through, isn't there? There are a lot of really, really talented players that are threatening them. We thought it was like a changing of the guard, I think, a year or two ago. And now, when you think that some of these players have really got established, in the like Swiatek and Sabalenka. And then you've got the likes of Marketa Vondrousova, who the Czech, another Czech player, right? How many Czech players are there? I think it was Muchova that Iga Swiatek beat at the French Open. She's another Czech player. So, I love to see that these new players coming along and really challenging what is no longer the old guard. They're this generation, right? And then Coco Gauff, as you say, lovely player who is showing consistency now. And this consistency is coming with maturity, but still the maturity seems to be coming early. So it will be very interesting next year if she can come out all guns blazing and take another title, another Grand Slam.
Yeah, I definitely think she does have the opportunity to kind of be right up there. It's interesting though, because our head-to-head against Iga Swiatek is quite poor, isn't it? I unless I'm wrong, I still don't think she's beaten her. And they kind of missed each other at the US Open, but that would be an interesting battle. I think if Coco can get the better of her, then she could really be on something. But yeah, I think that's quite an interesting battle between two really young players, and potentially those two could be the ones that kind of establish that dominance in women's tennis.
Yes, and it would be interesting to have that kind of with two very different games, rather like Martina and Chrissy Evert, back in the day there when they dominated. The battle of those two went on for years and very different styles. But I think now that Coco has won a Grand Slam, it makes such a big difference to your confidence, knowing that you can. And by beating Sabalenka too, that's no small feat in the final. And she just may have her tail up now and think that she can beat Swiatek. And so I'm looking forward to that battle because it really will be interesting. Because if she beats her, say early in the season, imagine what a battle that's going to set up for the rest of the season, for the rest of the Grand Slams. If she beats her once, she knows it's doable. And then we've got Ons Jabeur, of course, who was denied that title in Wimbledon. And she's such a fighter. That broke her heart, didn't it, when she lost? Just broke her heart.
Yeah, I think it was her third final when... Yeah, it was she's been in 3 finals and lost 3 finals, I think. Isn't that right?
Yes.
I think 2 Wimbledons and 1 French Open.
1 French,
which is, really, really, really tough. But I know her time will definitely come, I'm sure. She's another great player. And I guess she's just got to use the setbacks as motivation to hopefully finally win a tournament. But that was obviously very heartbreaking for her.
I do want to mention, though, and I think I sent you the video that I saw of Sabalenka after her loss. She took that very hard, just like Ons Jabeur did in Wimbledon. She took it very hard. But what I thought was very unsportsmanlike of her is smashing her racket when she knew there was a video camera watching her when she went backstage. She put her bag down and she smashed her racket, knowing that, she really did lose it. And, okay, she's frustrated. There's a lot of emotions there, but wouldn't you think she'd wait to get inside her hotel room?
Yeah, it was definitely a bit strange. I think initially I thought that it'd been filmed without, it was just the camera in the corner up in the ceiling or whatever. So she didn't know she was being filmed. But then, when there was a wide angle of the video released and there were cameras like kind of right next to her, so she knew she was being filmed, which I think it was a bit strange because it's kind of like playing up for the cameras, I guess. But she must have been gutted, but strange reaction.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't show too much bad sportsmanship in the future, because you really have to swallow it, don't you? And if as upset as you're going to be, you really, I think, have to save that for the privacy of your hotel room. But anyway, let's move on from tennis. Again, whilst you were away, there was that little event called the World Athletics Championships taking place in Europe.
Yeah, and another, I mean, again, like that was actually when it was during the World Cup, I think, wasn't it? And it was, I obviously knew it was happening beforehand, but it's just kind of in the background going on, really. And yeah, there were definitely a few stories that came through that I was really happy about. I think particularly Kat Johnson Thompson winning gold in the heptathlon. That made me really happy because she obviously had the absolute heartbreak at the Olympics where she pulled her hamstring during a race. And yeah, she's just I really like her just as an athlete. So I was really happy to see her win gold. And I guess anyone that wins gold in this competition now becomes a favourite for the Olympics, which is less than a year away, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I was very happy to see that result, even though I wasn't able to watch it live. I watched the highlights of her performance.
And such an important championship, of course, this year, as you say, because it's a precursor to the Olympics. It gives us a look at the athletes and what kind of form they're in a year out. And, what we can look forward to next year in Paris, because, everything is so competitive now in terms of the number of qualifiers, right? Because we're looking at equality in Paris between men and women. It's going to be the first time there's going to be equal amount of women at the Olympic Games.
Yeah, which is really, really incredible. I think it's kind of been years in the making, really, and like fine tuning the schedule to make sure that sports kind of can only be in the games if they've got like a 50-50 split with their male and female athletes. But it's amazing, I think, to have finally got there, and it's definitely something to celebrate.
Now, what's happening at the moment with rugby? Because I know it's the Men's World Cup. I'm rooting for the Brits, but they're not playing so well right now. So I'm going to reserve judgment for them. But what's happening on the women's front with rugby? You mentioned the other day that there was some activity there we should mention.
Yeah, so I think just a couple of kind of friendly matches, really, or test matches. So England played Canada over the weekend and won 50-24, which is quite impressive. I think Canada were a bit of a dark horse at the Women's Rugby World Cup last year. So that ended up being quite a dominant performance. There was a bit of controversy over the match because it wasn't broadcast on TV, so neither BBC nor ITV decided to pick up the rights for it and show it, not even on BBC iPlayer, which is like the red button over here. So yeah, it's shown on YouTube, and I think quite a lot of people were disappointed by that, seeing as the Women's Rugby World Cup last year got really impressive broadcast viewing figures. But then I think there was a kind of a few issues, like the matches were decided quite late. There wasn't much run-in time up to the matches to kind of advertise it for broadcasting. But yeah, I think overall a bit of a shame not to have that match shown on TV. But they're playing Canada again in, I think it's at Saracen Stadium. So I think that it definitely will be in or around London. And then they play New Zealand in late October, which, of course, that match will be massive. I think it's kind of, I think England and New Zealand are definitely regarded as two of the best women's rugby teams in the world right now. And New Zealand beat them in the World Cup final last year. But I think it was probably the best chance England had of beating New Zealand in a World Cup final. So I think they were really disappointed about that. So I guess chance for revenge next month, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it is exciting what's happening in rugby, I find, with the women's, because the standard of play, the quality, the skills now, it's every bit as gripping as the men's game. And that applies, I think, to a lot of sports, but particularly in rugby and football, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just really on the rise and just interest. And I think it's these big flagship tournaments like the World Cups. It's just such a good opportunity to, I guess, attract a new audience and just really rack up interest in those particular women's sports. I think maybe other women's sports lacks like the the prestigiousness of those big tournaments, which is why I think maybe football and rugby are kind of seeming to be leading the way. But yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely a really exciting time for rugby and football.
Well, don't go away. We'll be back with a lot more news after this commercial break. Well, speaking about football, we do have a bit of news. There was a lot of drama off the field whilst you were away, Nancy, which I'm sure you've caught up with the Spanish team. But also what we've just come out of this past weekend is 2 friendlies. The US played South Africa in 2 friendlies. They beat them on both occasions, 3-0 and then 2-0. But the standout performances, I think, were Trinity Rodman. She scored on both occasions, assisted on both occasions by Alex Morgan. So a passing of the torch there. And then Emily Sonnet scoring in the game this weekend, which was very nice. That was off a corner from Megan Rapinoe, which again I thought was a nice passing of the baton. And then for Lynn Williams to score a couple of times. And she was really on form in the first of those friendlies in Cincinnati. They were in Cincinnati and then on Thursday and then on Sunday in Chicago. And on both occasions, we saw also the retirement of 2 of our top players. Julie Ertz retired last week, and then Megan Rapinoe retired from the international scene. 2 very noteworthy players, Nancy. This is going to be an interesting transition as we in the US are looking for a new coach, as you know. So very much a transition time and a reflective time, I think, after the disappointment of the World Cup.
Yeah, I think interesting with the Lynn Williams, because I know there was a bit of unhappiness that she wasn't played that much in the World Cup. So I think it's kind of almost symbolic that she then scores 2 goals in kind of the first new era of the US women's football team. So, yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. Definitely interesting to see who is appointed as coach next, because I think it's going to be a really tough job. And there's quite a narrow pool of potential managers that I think are of the right level to take on a team like the US. And then, yeah, just kind of the big players like Julie Ertz and Rapinoe going, who, I mean, I guess Rapinoe maybe didn't have the best World Cup, but even just her personality in the squads and her influence in the squads and her experience must have been really, really useful. And yeah, a player like Julie Ertz is definitely the mentality, I guess. And they're both from the US teams that have won a lot and have that winning mentality. So it's going to be interesting, I think, with them going and a new generation that maybe haven't won as much on the international stage coming through. I guess how you keep up that winning mentality and get over what happened at the World Cup. So with the Olympics next year as well, it's not like there's going to be a break. International tournaments, they just keep coming. So there's not really that much time to do the work to get them back up there. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it all turns out and who steps in to try and lead that change.
You know, and you talk about these top players who have been part of the winning US team now for so long. They did provide some kind of a backbone, if you will, to the squad on and off the field, right? They were the very core of the team, and the young players, they're coming on board, the old players that have left before them. They were the core of the team, along with Alex Morgan. I can't forget her, of course. And I think, you know, that, and Emily Sonnet now has stepped up. We've got some players who've you're around the 50 cap mark, you know, like Sullivan as well is another player that I think of. There's a lot of players that are, you know, that are forming the core, if you will, of the team. And they're going to be really important to the future of the team with all these young players that we've got, terrific young players. I mean, Crystal Dunn is another one I would say would be a core player as well. And Lynn Williams is proving that. I think she should have posted after her 2 games, like, take that, right? Because I thought that was a wonderful return to the front line there and showing them what they missed in the World Cup. That's another conversation. I think the decisions that were made at the World Cup, we won't go there. Moving forward, though, you mentioned that we need a new coach, and we absolutely do. At the moment, we've got an interim coach in Twyla Kilgore, who's been holding the fort there, and she'll be happy with those 2 friendly wins, and good for the confidence of the team there. But we're looking ahead to who might replace Vlatko Andonovski. The names they've got there, I like that they've got, of the 5 names that were aired on the pre-game show last week, we've got Serena Wiegman, who we know is not going to leave England anytime soon, but they like to have her top of the list, because if she was available, she would be the first pick, right? And then Emma Hayes from Chelsea, Laura Harvey, who's with OL Reign right now, has been over here in the NWSL system for a while, so very familiar, very popular name, and very keen to get this job. So that will be very interesting. The other 2 names were Bev Priestman, the Canadian coach, and Tony Gustafsson, who led Australia to the semis in this World Cup, and I think did a tremendous job. There's a number of reasons, though, Nancy, that I think we really should have at this time a women coach, a female coach.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think especially when you've got the caliber of the female coaches in that list, like if you've got those coaches that are absolutely world class and have proven themselves at that level, I think maybe Laura Harvey is the only one that doesn't have the international, and Emma Hayes, I guess, but they've both just achieved massively in a domestic level and are really well respected. I don't think there's any reason not to hire a woman. Especially with that short list, it's just the best coaches in women's football, really. So Laura has been with the young squad, with the youth squads over here. So she does have international experience, maybe not as much as obviously Serena or Bev Priestman or Tony Gustafsson, but yeah, I'm rooting for a woman to step up again. I don't know if they want to call Jill Ellis back. I think she's checked that box for herself. But it will be interesting to see. And they're looking like getting someone in place by early December. That was what they announced the other day. So we'll watch this space eagerly. And then, we mentioned to kind of core players like Kristen Press and Tobin Heath, who have been out with injuries now. I don't think Kristen's going to get back until the spring. But, they're not over their international career, but they were just discarded for whatever political reason, and also injuries. Do you think they should come back, or do you think we should move on now to these newer players, these younger players? Yeah, I guess I feel like maybe we just need to see what level they're playing at. Coming back from injury and a bit of time away from the pitch, it'd be interesting to see what they're playing at, like club level. Like if they're performing really well at club level, there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be picked for the international team. But yeah, I guess you've just got to see kind of what their performance level is at the moment. So yeah, I mean, if they're playing well, then definitely. I don't think it should be because of the older generation, they shouldn't be included. I think as long as they're good enough and performing at the right level, then they should, yeah. Yeah,
absolutely right. It's going to be about performance and fitness. Well, watch this space. But meanwhile, over on the other side of the pond, you had, or you've got another one to go, but you started off with the UEFA Women's National League game, the first one against Scotland last week, and it was very good to see that 2-1 win. But particularly for Lucy Bronze, who we mentioned before, didn't have the best World Cup by any means, may be considered a senior player now, without being rude to her. But she really redeemed herself with a beautiful goal, didn't she?
Yeah, it was a great goal, a nice diving header to open the scoring. And then another header from Lauren Hemp as well, which I also thought was really impressive. So, yeah, I think England were very strong in the first half, and then Scotland came back into it in the second half, and I think we're maybe unlucky to not get an equaliser. So it was it was an entertaining match, quite close. It was closer than I thought it was going to be, but yeah, great to see Lucy Bronze on the score sheet, and I'm sure she maybe feels that goes some way to redeeming her, I guess, World Cup performances, or kind of being at fault for Spain's goal in the World Cup final.
And notably, Sarina Wiegman did say in her post-game press conference that they didn't perform so well in the second and they were missing in the second half. So she'll go back to the drawing board, I'm sure. But I love her candor and honesty. You know, she's just an all-round superhuman being, that woman.
Yeah. Yeah, she is great. I'm very relieved that she's our manager.
Yes, for sure. Well, hopefully we'll steal her when she's done, when she's won an Olympic gold medal. And maybe that's her goal. She'll win the gold medal for you guys. And maybe then we could have her after that. Do you mind?
Maybe. We'll see. It depends who we get. Maybe take Casey Stoney back from the US.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there is that. Yeah, well, we'll watch this space because there's going to be some changes, certainly in coaching in the next couple of years at national level. And you've got another game coming up. You're going to play the Netherlands, aren't you, this week? So that will be, I think, a really good test for them. So no wonder, Serena's wanting to really get them to pull their socks up and, improve on their second half performance if they're going to be playing in her backyard.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, I think, an interesting game. I think they might have lost to Belgium in their respective fixture, which I guess is maybe a bit of a shock, seeing as they had a really good World Cup and a very talented team, and maybe Belgium are a bit weak. But I feel like that's maybe more of a blip than that's reflective on their team. So, yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah. Now, we're talking about injuries and players that are coming back. We've got Beth Mead back, right? You've got her back on the Arsenal squad. What about her partner, Vivian Miedemeijer? Is she back and fit to play for the Netherlands?
No, not in the Netherlands. So she's, I think, back training, but I don't think she's fully back. She hasn't played yet on the pitch. So I don't know whether she'll be in Arsenal's squad for the opening game of the season on Sunday. But I think she probably will make an appearance within the next month. So I think the next international window, if she's playing well, then she'll be back in the Netherlands squad. But yeah, no, not at the moment. Okay.
Well, at least those two are coming back. But Beth is actually playing, isn't she?
No, she hasn't played yet. So she was named as a sub for Arsenal's Champions League qualifying matches a couple of weeks ago. But that wasn't with the idea of playing her. It was more to keep her around the squad and training with the squad. I think we'll see her play for the first time on Sunday against Liverpool. I reckon if the scoreline is favourable, then she'll come on as a sub, maybe for the last 10 minutes or something. So hopefully this weekend we'll see her play.
Right. And then you've got Belgium in October, haven't you? The Lionesses.
Yeah. I think we've played them a few times in recent years, and yeah, they're a decent team, but I think Netherlands are definitely the strongest team in our group.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap up our football segment with the latest news from the Spanish women's team, which hit the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Really, I thought, took away their glory of being the World Cup champions with all the controversy that came with their, post-success, and the performances. It really was cruel, I think, to the girls to be robbed of the glory of being in, and it was totally undermined, all this controversy with Luis Rubiales resigning from the federation, and then Jorge Vilda being sacked as the coach, but at least being replaced by a woman. What's your biggest takeaway from all of that, if you had to summarize all of that? I know you had some catching up to do when you got back.
Yeah, I think overall it's definitely such a shame, and I think it's kind of a bit ironic that it's probably the most media attention that those Spanish women's football players have ever had, and it's kind of for an entirely negative reason. And I just hope that kind of when this is all over, that media coverage will stay, but for a positive reason, to report on what talented footballers they are. In some ways, I'm kind of glad that England lost the Women's World Cup final. I initially was annoyed at the fact that Jorge Vilda would win the World Cup and kind of, I guess, have his methods justified and validated. But it ended up, I guess, that whole win and everything that happened shining a spotlight on the Spanish governing body and showing exactly why players had been boycotting the national team. So in a really weird way, they needed to win the World Cup to be able to shine the spotlight on the situation and make these changes. I'm still a bit dubious of the RFEF, the Spanish governing body, because they keep saying they're going to do stuff and then still treating the players badly. So, say things are going to change and then call up all the players against their will to the national team. But it now seems that the majority of players are happy and that change is starting to happen. I think it's going to be still a long time before those changes are actually implemented and, everything is good again. I think that kind of change can take years. But yeah, it's a shame that the players have had to have gone through such an awful situation and had such a big moment kind of overshadowed by this. But then at the same time, I think they have to be admired and applauded, and they will be remembered for standing, so strong and I guess making such a big difference to the future of women's football, because they've basically said we're not going to take this anymore. And a lot of other women's football teams are saying the same thing. And I think women's football will be better for it in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. And not just at that national level, but the women around the world were standing by the Spanish team. All the women, I think, just came together and showed the solidarity that we need, not just in the sport, but across all women's sports too, to continue to, stand our ground. So, kudos to them. I think the future may be looking a bit brighter for them, but I'm not sure what the future is for this coach, though, Monte Torme, who's actually taken over. Does that mean that she's got a permanent contract there, or is it an interim contract?
So I think it is a permanent contract. She's kind of, they've chosen her. I think I saw an interesting tweet where it's obviously celebrating the fact that it's a female coach and it's the first female coach of the Spanish women's national team, but they've put her in charge in a time of crisis where she's most likely to fail. So there's kind of that frustrating aspect of it where she's not been given the best opportunity, really, because she's been given a team in crisis. And I guess maybe we'll take some of the blame for what was happening around the Sweden game. She's permanent, but it's hard to know how permanent everything will stay after this, and whether the players will be happy with her, or whether they will see her as an extension of Jorge Vilda's coaching reign. So, we'll see. Yeah.
We will watch that, of course, and everything else that's going on around women's sports. So we can bring that to you with the next episode, which we're going to do monthly for now, Nancy, because we've got, I think, you've got a very busy schedule. Just tell everybody what you're doing now that you're back.
Yeah, so, I've recently gone freelance, and I'll be writing a book as well during that time, which is quite daunting. But I've got have to have that finished by the 31st of January. So basically for the next 4 months, writing that book will definitely be my life. And then to kind of so I can still kind of write about more topical events as well. I've set up a women's sports newsletter as well. So I'll be doing that when I can, really. And just to allow me to kind of keep writing about what's happening in women's sports at the moment, because I think I'd miss that if I was just writing my book.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You've got to keep your finger on the pulse here, what's happening day to day. How can people sign up for your newsletter, Nancy?
Yeah, so if you follow me on Twitter, Instagram or LinkedIn, I've got the link on there. It's quite long for me to read out, so maybe if I send it to you, Chris, you could maybe put it in the show notes.
Sure.
But you just follow the link and put your email in, and then that's it. As simple as that. You'll get the newsletter to your email. So yeah.
Tell everybody what it's called and why you've named it.
Yeah, so it's called The Cherry on Top. I was struggling a bit to think of a good name, and then I was kind of looking at quotes, and I saw a quote from Billie Jean King, who's kind of the epitome of fighting for equality in women's sport. And she said, everyone thinks women should be thrilled when we get crumbs. I want women to have the cake, the icing, and the cherry on top too. So I was like, oh, call it cherry on top, because it kind of feeds into that quote. And yeah. I like it as well.
Well done, Nancy. Well, thanks for coming back onto the podcast, and we'll continue to bring you more news from around the world of women's sports when we get together. As I said, for now, it's going to be a monthly show. We'll continue monthly, so we can do a roundup of what's happening, because, as always, there's plenty happening in women's sports. So for now, Nancy, thank you very much for coming back to the microphone.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's fun as always.
All right, we'll be back next month with another episode. Until then, thanks for listening. Don't forget you can leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And also you can follow us on social media. Just look for WiSP on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're all out there on all those platforms. So from me, Chris Stafford, and from Nancy Gillen, thanks for listening. Goodbye for now.